Okay.
Okay. Evening, everyone. Welcome to the Accelerated Masters and Doctoral Program. Today we're trying something a little bit different, but before we start, I just need to share a few things with you. For those of you who might not know me, I am Professor Tennyson Mukuchini. I am the project leader for this program that we support you with. I also happen to be the Dean of the College of Graduate Studies, where all the issues to do with honors, masters and doctoral student success get dealt with. Of course, many of you have attended my sessions before, and in recent times, I've not been as readily available as I ought to be. Some of the sessions have been facilitated by other very capable facilitators, but for whatever reason, they may not always know the institutional responses to support you. So the idea is that for the next coming weeks, we will bring me back in every shape or form so that I can deal with things that you have found traditionally difficult. So normally at this time of the year, we have a very wide mixture of students. We have people who are still struggling with their proposals, or sometimes we have people who are working with, they've completed their proposals and everything, and they are now working on data collection or writing up their chapters, whichever one of those is happening. So really the session is quite a mixed bag. And the usefulness with having me is that I have been exposed and have taught across all the platforms with different levels of people studying at different parts of their research journey. Also, I am what they normally call a multi-methodologist, which means that there is no methodology that I have not studied or can teach on. So, so typically what you would encounter is that you are taught by people who have specific things that they have a preference for, or they would call themselves experts in. On this occasion, you get the chance to deal with a one-stop shop, as some have referred to me as, and so you are welcome to the one-stop shop, where we'll discuss all things that tend to challenge you. So firstly, for those who are at the very beginning, people always want to contest or clarify issues around developing their topics, how they can refine their topics, how they can target their topics so that they are ready for a master's or a doctorate. So I will work you through, I am able to guide you and support you with that. I'm also able to help guide you with objective setting, with setting your aims and all that stuff, and doing your literature review, working on your theoretical or conceptual frameworks, all issues to do with methodology, issues to do with reporting your results, issues to do with turning your results into theory, developing models, developing frameworks, developing strategies based on your findings, and then of course ultimately the whole job of writing up and developing your thesis. So there is no part in this research journey that is not covered or cannot be covered by these types of sessions. What I want to ask is, we have a platform, the live Q&A, where I recommend very strongly that all of you take a moment to ask any of the research questions that you're worried about, and I'll clarify them. Because I cannot anticipate what exactly is likely to come up, I can't put up a prepared presentation. What I might do is if someone asks me something that needs a good 2-3 minute clarification, I will scan through my laptop and then find the session that speaks to the item that you have asked. But what I want to just ask of everybody this very, very minute is that if you see the question and answer section, please type in a question if you have one, anything that relates to your study, from issues to do with how to do certain things, issues to do with the policies of the university. There are things that people ask about that are new policies that they are being faced with. All of those things, we are there and we cover them. So that is essentially what we will be offering you the opportunity to do. Now, we also I must point out that you have the rare access to the dean who oversees things to do with the policies that relate to how you are supported. So ultimately, the issue around if there's discontent about certain ways that colleges offer supervision and all sorts of things, you come ultimately when you complain to the colleges, you complain to your supervisor. If it is unresolved, it ultimately ends up at my desk, and it is ultimately I who must oversee the correction. So you have the rare opportunity this evening and tomorrow evening, by the way, we have the opportunity this evening and tomorrow evening of accessing me, being able to ask questions, and any question that relates to your study is not out of bounds. So that is what you have in front of you. If by any chance someone asks a very detailed question and they ask a question that feels like I need to post a presentation to answer it, I will scan through my computer documents, pull up the session, do the 1 or 2 slides that help to clarify whatever the issue is. So really you have a once in an academic life opportunity to clarify, question, seek answers to this non-moving one-stop shop that you've got. So as I'm doing this, please note I may turn off my camera on and off. And the reason I do that is because when I present to you and my face is on the screen, it has an impact on the bandwidth, and for some people it affects the clarity of the vocals of the presentation. So please allow and accommodate that. I am just about to do that very thing this minute before I look to the first question, and I'm looking here and I'm seeing that so far there is one very well publicized question and 3 or 4 others that I need to look at to clarify if they should be dismissed or dealt with. Right. Okay. I am engaged. So the first question that I have here is, and I'll read it out as best as I can. I am engaged in the research proposal for a PhD and want to embark on mixed method study on the impacts of instructional leadership of schools heads of departments on school-based teachers' professional learning and curriculum delivery. What are the possible samples? What are the possible samples of questions and participants? What could be the possible theories and conceptual framework? I currently have adult learning and instructional leadership in mind. What else is related to this topic? I also struggle with types of mixed methods. Where should I start? Quantitative and then qualitative, or vice versa. Okay, now this is a very complicated question, very complicated. I can tell that the person who submitted this has really put thought into this, but in putting thought into it, they've also loaded it with complexities. So what I will do is just deal with one thing at a time. So firstly, if you look at this, so the writer tells us what they are looking at. They are looking at the impacts that instructional leadership by heads of departments has in curriculum delivery. So first and foremost, I think that topic, the actual topic itself, has been framed in a way that doesn't tell you a lot about what it is that the individual is interested. And so that is where, firstly, if I were to look at this, I would say, look, we need to assist you. We need to assist you to direct your topic in such a way that anyone who reads it with an understanding. And so to do that, one has to think, right, I must, before I can have a topic, I need to always, and with your research, you must always at every single point, every single time, speak about the problem that has sparked your interest, whatever that problem is. So from this topic, one cannot tell immediately, but if because of the fact that I'm exposed a lot to these things, I am starting to think that firstly, the researcher has found that there are problems in the way that curriculum is delivered and so forth. So that's the first, that they believe that curriculum is developed in ways that don't assist the process of getting the student to learn. And they also now want to see whether or the extension of the problem is that actually the reason things don't go so well in terms of delivery is because there is limited obvious leadership in the way that instruction is taken up in the educational space. So to begin anywhere with this topic, one has to pin down what the problem that is being studied is. Because it is only when you know the problem that you can make decisions about whether it's mixed methods or not. You can make observations about what order of inquiry one will follow. Will it be qualitative, then quantitative, or vice versa? All of those things are only clear if one starts to understand the questions that are being asked. What is the problem? What is the problem that you want to understand better? So remember, research is all about extension of your knowledge about a particular phenomena or a particular problem that exists in your area of practice or in a discipline that you're interested in. One of those. So when you are talking about anything, make sure you problematize that. So this example that I've been given, what you, the person who has written it, needs to do is to say, what is the problem that I want to study better? What is the problem that I need to study better? And once you understand what the problem is the problem to do with the fact that there is poor curriculum delivery, and you have noticed, or the research has suggested that it's to do with poor instructional leadership? Is that the problem, or is there another problem? Once you understand that problem, you then ask yourselves, what are the questions that I need to understand in relation to this problem? So maybe your first problem would be, I want to see how common issues to do with curriculum delivery are. How common are these curriculum delivery problems reported? What is the nature of the curriculum delivery problems? What are the solutions that people have spoken about? And all sorts of things. So those questions that you want to ask, they give you a sense now of what type of methodology you should use. So if your first question, for example, is you want to know the numeric or statistical appearance of these problems related to curriculum development, then we know that the first phase of your study will be a quantitative phase, because you're counting things. You are populating stuff using numerics, using you are calculating these things using numerics. You are interested in the numbers. You are interested in the statistical appearance of something. So that tells you that your first question will need you to understand whatever you're understanding by using quantitative approaches. Then, if you are sure now that your first questions are layered in a particular way, you can literally look at question 1 and say, does question 1 lend itself to a qualitative or quantitative inquiry? Then you get the answer. So you know question 1 is quantitative. Then you say, what is the next question I need to ask? So I know the extent of this problem. Let me understand what the nature of the symptoms of this challenge are. So that becomes your question 2. And you realize that, look, for me to understand the nature of something, I won't be counting it. I have to sit with people and do in-depth conversations. That sounds qualitative. So you now know that after your initial quantitative phase, you follow that with a qualitative phase. So then remember, when you're saying you now want to know whether to use qualitative or quantitative methodologies, you are fixed now by virtue of the fact that you now do know the order. You do know that for you to answer the question that you've got at hand, your first way of dealing with things will be to look at the quantitative. Then the second way will be to look at the qualitative. So that whole issue about the order and understanding which comes first or which comes second, it all is buried in the question. If you know your research questions, the things you want to discover, list them. Once you've listed those things, you say the first thing I want to discover, is it quantitative or qualitative? The second thing I want to discover, is it quantitative or is it qualitative? So what I want to show you very quickly, and I want I hope that I will be able to share this as I intend to share it. And this relates to let's see how well I do with this. Remember, you are all asking about the question was which type of mixed method do I want to utilize? Yeah, so now I will bring you up to here. I think I've taken over the sharing screen, and now remember, I just wanted to bring you to this issue around the different types of mixed method. And you will see that once you've confirmed that the question you need to answer needs to be answered using a mixture of qualitative and quantitative approaches, then you are bound to having to decide this thing. With mixed methods, there are 3 decisions that have to be made. Firstly, do these questions that you're interested in appear like things you could answer at the same time? So would you know your first thing that you're interested in at the same time? Could you collect data for question 1 while you're collecting data for question 2? Or do you need to collect data for question 1 so it informs your direction in relation to question 2? That then decides whether your study is a concurrent mixed method or a sequential mixed method. The next thing that people will ask is that you just ask, so which one of these is better? Which one is more important? Is my study largely quantitative or is it largely qualitative? And you do that so you get a sense of how, the split in relation to how much of your interest is qualitative, how much is quantitative. Then the next thing that you do is you talk about how the qualitative and the quantitative are mixed. So sometimes things are merged together. So I take a qualitative and I take a quantitative and I bring them together. That is merging. So there are typologies or types of mixed methods research that talk about the things being merged. Then there are types of mixed methods that talk about things being embedded. And embedding means if you take, if you have a ground and you take a tennis ball and you bury it in the ground, that's embedding. So if you think of the two different types of methods being, if someone had qualitative research and they embed quantitative research in it, then we now know that, so it's largely a qualitative study, but they threw in quantitative to make it have two faces. Then the other thing is connecting the data means actually doing a qualitative element to your study, doing a quantitative element, and then when you make discoveries, talk about how the two things connect to each other. So those are the different ways in which mixed methods designs exist. And now here are some examples. So the first example is this type 1, they call it triangulation design. So it's also called a concurrent design. You do your qualitative as shown on your left screen, and you do your quantitative, and then you take the results from it and you bring them together and you discuss them. But that fact that you did these things at the same time means actually you would call this a concurrent mixed method design, but it's concurrent triangulation design because the two things are happening at the same time. As we proceed with this, you will get different types of mixed methods. So here there's one that they call a convergence model, and this convergence model, things are equal in the way that you deal with qualitative data, you do with quantitative data, but when you get the results, you bring them together in a converging way, very much in terms of that whole mixing story that I was saying is one of the decisions that people make. So that is just an insight into some of the ways in which you deal with this whole world of quantitative and qualitative study. So when people say, what are the possible samples that I could use? What are the possible samples that I could use in understanding my topic? The question you ask yourself is, what are the questions that I want to have answered? And out of all the people who are related to the subject, which person, which group of people have the best insights into what I want to study? That's the simple question. And then once you know what that sample is, if you're using them for a qualitative element of your study, then you use data saturation as your guide. If you're using them for a quantitative part of your study, you have to find out what the maximum population that's there is, and then apply a sample size formulation calculation to be able to determine what you need. But the difference is in terms of who matters and who doesn't matter. Is it urban or rural schools? Is this or that? All of that depends on what you believe you're interested in and who you think would it all depends on you looking at who you're interested in and figuring out which group would offer you the closest insight into the questions that you want answered. So if, for example, you wanted to know about the experience of people on this program when I teach them, you would have a decision. Do I ask other students Do I ask other facilitators? Do I ask who? Do I ask what? So the decision about who you ultimately ask is the product of you really looking at the questions you want to answer and making a decision about who is best to answer that. Then in terms of what are the possible theories that one could look at, the issue around theories is very specific. So in a topic, there are certain concepts that are obviously being contested. So this topic that you have now, you've spoken about leadership, you speak about curriculum delivery. So actually, the areas or fields of knowledge that you relate to are to do with instructional leadership and to do with success in curriculum delivery. So your theories will come from there. How you find the right theories, it's a hit and miss game. You go and read up about those two fields that you're interested in and read until you get to a theory that you think, hey, this theory helps to explain what I'm trying to figure out. Then you know what you've got. People ask, how many theories do I need? Look, for a master's level thing, people will get away with 1 or 2 theories. Then for a doctorate, people generally need 3 or 4 or more theories. So those numbers I'm giving you are not written on concrete anywhere. They're just of the kind of observations people have made about how these things work out. Okay. Good evening. I'm currently struggling with research methodology. I'm not sure which to choose between simple random sampling and purposive sampling. I'm also not sure on my sample size since I don't have the exact population size. So those questions are all connected to each other. Firstly, you must make a decision about whether your study is interested in things that are qualitative or interested in things that are quantitative. So the phenomena that you're looking at, is it about getting explanations and narratives, or is it about counting the existence of something? If it is about counting the existence of something, you are confirming that this is a quantitative study. And if it is a quantitative study, then you have to use probability-based sampling. And probability-based sampling is where things like random sampling go, stratified sampling, systematic sampling. So if your topic is quantitative, then it's random sampling that becomes one of the possible choices. But if your study is qualitative and you're interested in engaging with people who have the characteristics that you're interested in, then that is a qualitative study. So when you ask me which sample, whether you need random sampling or purposive sampling, I can't answer that until I know what the type of study you have is. If your study is qualitative, then random sampling is the more correct. If it's quantitative, random sampling is what you need. If it's qualitative, then purposive sampling is what you need. Now, in terms of sampling size, randomized sampling works if you know what the extent of the future population is. So you can't random sample if you don't know how many people are available for you to sample from. So you need some way of projecting this number, whether that is the calculated guess where you know that I'm interested in these 10 entities, they've got 50 people in them. I think I'm working with 500 potential candidates. Unless you have that bit, use sample size calculating becomes difficult. Because to calculate, we need to know what you are drawing from. So if someone say, let's pick a sample, an appropriate sample of students who have attended my session, it's impossible No, that's the wrong word. It's nearly impossible to give a sample size if you don't know the total amount of people. But there's one type of sampling called systematic sampling, where if you don't know how many people or how many items are in the area of interest that you have, then what you do is do this systematic sampling. And systematic sampling works something like this. It basically works on the premise that a researcher would agree that I don't know what my upper limit is, but what I do know is that there will be people who will represent samples, who will represent potential sample candidates. And what I will do is make sure that I choose the fourth person that I come across as my sample. So in systematic sampling, people will make a decision that they are choosing the fourth item that they see. So if you were going to get insights about a shopping experience from people who go to a shop, but because you don't know how many people will eventually come, you will decide that, look, I will interview the third person that I see at every time. So 1, 2, the third one I get, 1, 2, the third one I get. And that is a form of sampling. But you actually do need a population size for all the other types of sampling to exist. In qualitative research, we don't need to know numbers. All you are aiming for is what we call data saturation. So if you believe that you have people who have experienced the phenomena you're interested in, and you want, you have people that have experienced this, but you want them to be, you want to interview people who can give you insights. What you do is you just start to interview people that you think meet your characteristics that you require. And when you get to a point where you think, oh, all the answers are leading to the same thing, they're saying the same sentiments, then you know that your data is saturated. And that is the point at which you can say, this is where I'm stopping my sampling. Okay. There's a question. I don't know if it's a question. Someone has just put narrative inquiry method. Lived experience of a hidden curriculum that has the potential to serve as a supplementary to the formal curriculum of pre-service teachers. So folks, I don't know if that's a question or a statement or something. I can't answer that, unfortunately. Good evening, I'm an honors student. I've conducted in-depth interviews with farmers to collect data. How do I represent my data in the results section? If you could please provide guidance on how I analyze the data. The questions that are asked in my questionnaire are not of the statistical nature. Where can I create graphs? Okay, so firstly, Fadwa, when you do qualitative research, the things you are looking for are not the same as quantitative research. So there is no expectation for you to draw graphs if graphs don't appear. Rule number one, that's the first thing. Secondly, you may have seen qualitative studies that appear to have numbers, but all that would have happened is all of us, if we are studying groups of people, we need to give an overview of the characteristics of the sample. So say you were interviewing farmers, maybe you've got information about their different age groups, the age groups of these farmers that you dealt with, or you also have information about maybe the length of years that they've been farmers. So all of that information represents data that you can represent numerically. So you will find that when people are giving an overview or insights into the sample that they are working with, they will reflect that as numbers. But every other part of your reporting does not need to be numbers. It can literally be narratives. So when you have seen graphs in qualitative studies, it's been to do with them actually wanting to engage. The graphs that you've seen, it's the participants or the researchers wanting to present a summary of their findings to you, a summary of the sample that they're looking at. But the findings, qualitative findings, you say, look, these are the 10 questions I was interested in. And when I say questions, I'm not talking about the items that were in your questionnaire or in your interview. I'm talking about the broad questions. So you know how your objectives can be turned into questions? Those questions are the things that you want to write your results in a way that aligns with them. So if maybe your first interest was you want to know the behaviors of farmers in relation to this, when you present your findings, the first part will be talking about that very element that you were interested in. In terms of analysis, there are several, and what I want to guide you to do is just to go and Google qualitative data analysis approaches, and there are number of templates, number of guidances that you can use, but all of them basically do the same thing. They ask you as a researcher to read your material and access it several times. They ask then, after that process, that you submit so they then, remember, the first part of the data analysis bit is that you read things over and over, and you read them with the expectation that you want to see if there are themes or issues that are spoken about many a time. Then as you're reading over and over, you start to say, oh, I found 40 things that they're spoken about. Can I group these things into similar items? Then when you read again, you turn those 40 things into 20, but they've got more information now because they're based on more data collected. And that iteration and repeating is generally what qualitative analysis looks like. But the exact steps that you will follow make sense, especially at honors level. It makes sense that you go online and you search for a data collection approach. And there are several, there are many, a data analysis approach, sorry. And then you use them, and all they do is they just give you a step-by-step guide on how you analyze data. And it's best to follow that if you're at that level. Okay, so the next question that we have is the question from Yolanda, and in that, Yolanda is actually asking about certain criteria, and so basically, folks, here's there's a in reviews. Let me rewind back. So firstly, there are some areas where instead of people gaining their study or gaining their qualifications through collecting data from living human beings, there are some study options that allow people to collect their data from documented studies that have occurred. And then, of course, when people are reviewing data that they've obtained from other sources, pre-existing papers and so forth, there are particular criteria that they can use. And in particular, when people are doing what we call a systematic review, there's one kind of criteria that can be used, or there are many kinds, but there's one in particular that they call Prisma. This was published in 2018 first, so it's very new. Hey? It's made up of a checklist that has reporting items, and in it, it's also got two optional things that you include when you're completing a scoping review. And scoping reviews are basically they're straightforward ways of pulling together, synthesizing all the evidence and the literature that exists on a topic. So when you are pulling things together, the way that you pull them together is you do that through asking very specific information of all your sources. So one of the things that might they would say you can do, if someone says, how can you add Prisma criteria to your review? Prisma criteria ask things like, was the title specified properly? What's the quality of the structured summary that you get? Does the researcher provide a rationale for the study? Are the objectives clear? Is there a protocol that is utilized for registering participants? What are the eligibility criteria for the participants? What are the information sources that have been used? How was the search for literature conducted, and so forth? But these are 20 items that Prisma directs you to inquire and ask about. So when you are saying, how do you explain the Prisma criteria? Basically, you go and you find the Prisma criteria, and I've said they are widely available on the internet. Then you ask with each of the things that you are reviewing, you ask and provide reporting on the 20 items plus 2 optional ones. And that is how you integrate it into your work. But of course, if you're doing a scoping review and you have 40 papers, that you do the Prisma checklist on all of them, but you discuss and compare them as a separate narrative document. Prof, how do one select a project? I'm cancelled my project this year because my module says I have to come with one myself. I did chemical engineering, and we were provided, or we submit what the company provided me with. Now I'm doing environmental management, and the module says I have to come up with the project. I'm struggling to come up with the project. So here's the thing. You need to take journal articles from your field, read them almost from page to page, and understand what the problems people in your field are struggling with. And with each journal article, they usually at the end talk about directions for research. They talk about directions for future reference. They talk about implications for practice, all of that stuff. All of that stuff that you see in these journals that you're reading gives you a sense of the questions that remain unanswered. So on the basis of those questions that remain unanswered, you now know that, in my industry, people are still arguing about X, they still haven't figured Y, they still haven't figured Z. So that gives you a sense now of the topic and project focus you should have. Actually, to do that, if you read several papers, you will start to find that all of them seem to be asking the same issues that they need clarity with, and that then becomes how you target your project focus. Prof, I'm a final year honor student and I'm keen quantitative research admirer. Lately, we're required to submit a research proposal, and the research method we're required to include survey research. My question is when to use the test of significance. Look, Lakaje, this is a very, you're literally asking a question that one should consider 4 years later than when you are considering it. So my first question, my guidance with this would be, look, the question you're asking far outweighs where you are, and let's focus on where you are before we get waylaid by different things. So a t-test is really a test that you do. It's a statistical test that people do to understand the strength of association between two things. So if, say, I was interested to know whether people hearing a gun shooting would cause them to run. And if I did that 100 times and they ran 95 times, then I would say, hey, the strength of association is that there's a 95 in 100 chance that shooting a bullet will cause people to run. So you get a sense of the statistical things that are being, as you get a quantification of how closely related the variables that are being looked at are. And really at the point of you offering the proposal and the method, you are not required to name that. You are not required to name that at all, or to speak about the t-test. So I think we'll leave it at that. I am a final year honor student and I'm keen. Right, okay. So first thing, at honors level, Lakaje, I wouldn't dare look at ANOVA, regression. You can look at deviations and correlations. So I think what my problem or the apparent challenge is that you want to know the things you should do at the very end of a study when you're yet to complete the study. So I would strongly recommend that, look, clarify the topic, and then the issues you need to know will come out, it will emerge out of that, rather than just entering the fray with the expectation that you will be using particular data analysis approaches when you are yet to figure out the nature of the data to be analyzed. So, and certainly at honors level, what we tend to do with statistical thing is go for analysis that occurs at one step. So the analysis will be one stage, but regression, for example, means understanding the strength of a relationship at two levels, how A is related to B and how B is related to C, for example. That's a regression analysis, but at honors level, we'll be only interested in how A is related to B. We never take it to the next level. You're not quite qualified to get there. So essentially what I'm saying to Lakanje is worry more about the methodology and less about this analysis story. Right. Good evening, I'm a master's student and currently completing my proposal. Will there be sessions available to assist with presentation and acceptance? Look, yes, there will be sessions, but I can tell you very briefly what to expect. So remember, with the proposal, you have to justify and show the researchers and others who are listening that your study is indeed worth being given the attention that you are now affording it. So the very first thing is, yes, give us the topic, give us the problem that your topic is focusing on. Remember, I said at the very beginning that research is entirely about understanding significant problems that have currently not been understood sufficiently. So when you are marketing or selling your topic, you have to make sure that the chosen topic you can evidence as being a substantial problem that is misunderstood. How substantial a problem is, you can show it by showing the statistics to show how common it is. You can show it by looking at showing that it is topical because it has been referred to many times in recent publications within your field, or you can talk about it because of its relevance. And relevance refers to the fact that it's something that has maintained its position as a concern for your field. So that are some of the things you do. Of course, you then have to prepare for giving an outline of the entire research process. So what are the questions you're looking at? How do you intend to answer them? And that type of stuff. But really, I mean, the session is about you validating that your problem is indeed understood. It's a problem that's worthy of attention, that the methodologies that you are proposing are on the average reasonable, and that you seem to have done adequate reading into your topic. But it's largely really to do with how well you've captured the problem that you want to study. That if you capture it well, then of course the listeners will understand very well that this individual understands that research is about understanding problems. Good evening, doctor. I think you want to say good evening, professor, but that's okay. I'm currently working on my master's proposal. My chosen topic is exploring the implications of including people living with disabilities in strategic positions of the workforce. Okay, so here's so this topic worries me a little bit. So every time that someone focuses on a topic, they do so on the basis of assumptions, things that they assume are known, things that they seem are not known, and so forth. So this question, the way that it is framed, it's suggesting that somewhere we have evidence to say that people living with disabilities perform differently in strategic positions of the workforce. That's what this is saying. But we cannot proceed any further with the topic if the founding assumptions are questionable and doubtful, and sometimes even confirmed to not be accurate. So we have no evidence in literature that suggests that people living with disabilities are somehow strategically weaker than those who are not living with disabilities. So that is the premise of the entire study is contested, because we need to know that this assumption that living with a disability affects your strategic, your competence in strategic workforce things, that has never been proven, and for that reason, the question itself is doubtful. So what I advise that person is to go back and say, what is the actual problem that I want to understand? What is the research area and the question that I want to have answered when it comes to research? What is the issue I want to understand? Then you are on the money. Hi, Prof. Thanks for this kind of sessions. I'm currently busy with my results chapter. It is the first time doing this, and I'm still struggling with my chapter. Should I ask, and how do I present my findings? Are themes taken from interview questions, or must I develop my themes? I'm applying a qualitative method. So, folks, there are many ways in which people approach writing results, but the easiest and most reliable way is that you can say, look, in my study, I was interested in knowing people's attitudes to this. I was interested in knowing how they cope with that. I was interested in knowing how they do with this. Those items that symbolize the questions that you're interested in, they become your template for reporting. So when you report your findings, you literally begin by giving us an overview of the group from whom you collected data. Then you proceed to share your results in the context of the questions that you are being asked to answer. And remember, in your interview, you might have 20 questions in your interview schedule, but those 20 questions might fall into 3 or 4 categories of things you're worried about. So when it comes to reporting, you report on the 3, you use the subheadings of the 3 or 4 things as the subheadings that guide you towards, as the subheading of the things that guide you towards presenting the results that matter to what you were asking. So your themes, you don't develop yourself, they will emerge from what you hear when it comes to the feedback from the participants. My topic is the role of internal auditors in enterprise cybersecurity in Southern Africa. On the said topic, I want to look at organizations' use of internal auditors to perform vulnerability assessments in relation to cybersecurity in order to identify the cyber risks that may have a negative impact on company IT systems. The goal is to find the gaps and report them to the management so that they can improve. So literally what this study, and what you see what happens sometimes, folks, is that we go so deep into academic speak that the clarity of what we're wanting to do gets depleted by this. So right now, this person, Anonymous, seems to have a premise, and that premise is that cybersecurity or the vulnerability that exists in organizations in terms of financial vulnerability, vulnerability to exploitation, to this, to that, all of that can be performed by cybersecurity interventions. And the interest then is, yes, we know that we know that there are problems with cybersecurity and this lack of, but what you're interested in is the participation of internal auditors in this process. So your job is to specify. Sorry, I'm trying to look at this question to find out what the actual question the individual is asking. So they've shared their topic. They tell me what they want to look at. And then they say the goal is to find this. But I'm actually looking at this and saying, what is the question here? So I don't see an obvious question, but what I want to stress to the individual who has written this is that, look, there may be a need for you to really separate out, are you interested in auditors and their role in cybersecurity, or are you interested in cybersecurity itself and the way that internal auditors look at it, or what is the angle of interest? Because that determines then how you collect data. It determines also how you focus certain objectives and so forth. So that question, I have answered what I thought was being asked because there is no question in it. I'm a final student in my BCom honors, interested in doing masters next year. However, I'm very lost as to how to think up a topic. Is it possible to have your email, sir? So Annie, here's the story. I am quite convinced, 100% convinced, that you have not listened or watched our videos on how to develop a topic. Because if you listen to those videos, you will have no doubt at all on how to do this. So what I'm asking is that if one of my team could share the link for all our sessions, so Annie can have a look at those old sessions, and I'm sure it will solve this issue. But remember, really topics are to do with us offering ways of understanding problematic areas. So
if you're studying a master's and it's in BCom, so are there any things in the commerce world that represent unresolved problems? Things like people maybe failing to service debt, or debt being offered to specific racial groups, anything of that nature, that could very easily be a topic for you. But for you to get to the topic, you need to have listened to our sessions. And from the question, I'm getting a sense that you have not listened to it. And I'm asking that the colleagues here share it with you. Hi, Prof. I'm a PhD student and conducting my research using sequential explanatory mixed method. So at what stage of the mix of the research integration will data take place? Integration of data will take place. So look, sequential explanatory mixed method means that you are actually going to do it means that you're going to do one paradigm first, and you get its output. Then you do another paradigm and get its output. Then you will do the integration of the integrated discussion of your findings. So in this mixed methods approach, you do the individual different designs, and you follow them all the way to completion. But you take those findings from each of them and you discuss them in concert with each other. So it's that whole issue of are you embedding? Are you doing this as I had suggested earlier? So next question, I'm currently doing my master's and need assistance with developing quantitative objectives and research questions for survey research. My study aims to investigate survival strategies implemented by SMEs. So remember, the development of questions is not a thumbsuck, eh? Generally speaking, people develop questions through looking at theories that help to explain the thing they're interested in, and then looking at identifying what concepts are included in those theories, and then asking for questions that help to offer clarity about the different concepts that are involved in these theories. So your development of questions is never about you. You always are looking at others who have written in the field, and you're looking at what they say is important for you to understand. And then on that basis, then that's where you develop questions, eh? And remember, quantitative objectives are not really, you don't develop quantitative objectives. You have questions that you're interested in, whose answer can only be expressed quantitatively. Then it means that that can be turned into a quantitative objective. So if you were to say, look, you're interested in knowing how many people are left-handed, the very fact that you said how many means you're interested in an answer that's numeric. And if you're interested in an answer that's numeric, then it means that you will have quantitative objectives that you are dealing with. But you can equally have qualitative ones as long as the question is phrased differently enough to accommodate that. Yes, so okay. Then will narrative inquiry methodology be suitable for following scenario lived experience? So here's the thing. Already, the very fact that you have said something is lived experience says that you are your domain or your unit of interest is around experiences. So which qualitative tradition do we know that is about experiences? So for me, when I look at this, I'm already thinking anything. The only reason that you may do narrative inquiry is that you might actually think, look, narrative inquiry, remember, is about studying the way in which stories are told by people experiencing a particular phenomena. So if you are saying, yes, you are studying this, but you're studying it as stories that participants tell, and you want to understand and get insights into the way they tell their stories, then it can be a narrative inquiry. But as it sits, it sounds to me more like a phenomenological type of study. When we choose a mixed method, which type of sampling method do you use? So mixed method assumes that there's a qualitative and a quantitative element. So you use a qualitative sampling approach for the qualitative bit and a quantitative sampling approach for the quantitative. When we choose good evening, Prof, what informs a student when the topic of research is over research? Is there anything like that? So folks, when people talk about things being over-researched, they're literally actually saying, look, the question that you're trying to answer has been answered by others in the study area, and there's no evidence that your work will add any new dimension. That's what they're saying. But you and I know that something may seem over-researched because of how the question has been posed and how you focus things. So you have scenarios where a topic may appear to be over-researched, but the challenge is not that it's over-researched. The challenge is that the question you're asking in relation to it has already been answered. So you can revise the question, but not necessarily change the topic. Okay, Philip has posed a question saying, currently doing an honors research proposal with the following brief. The objective of the study is to identify and understand the type of psychological distress that victim empowerment volunteers may experience. I think you should stop there. Look, folks, when you load questions with many things, you actually make them impossible to figure out. So for me, I think here the objective of the study is to identify the type of psychological distress that victim empowerment volunteers may experience in their voluntary work. Full stop. That's all, that's where you should stop. So I'm not sure, I see that there's a brief, but I'm not sure what is being asked of this brief beyond that. Would I set out theoretical paradigms of trauma, then PST? No. Yeah, Philip, I think a lot is happening here. Look, I am suggesting strongly that you go back to our sessions and look for my session that I've done on conceptual and theoretical frameworks. And it is also part of what we are providing when you look at the old things that we've got. Good evening. I've been asked to use each of my questions as a chapter. This is new to me. Are you able to explain how this works? Okay. So folks, that you to use each of your things as a chapter is intended to work. It's intended to work with it's intended to work with people who are doing a thesis by publication, where you are meant to publish a number of papers and then be made to graduate. But when we speak, we literally actually ask people to use the conventional chapters. So to me, for someone to say use each of your questions as a chapter is very new and potentially dangerous unless it's in a publication, PhD by publication route. So that's all I can say really about that. Someone's just sharing that their master's is inclusive education. My concern is on visually impaired educators and how they are accommodated in schools. So look, as I say, you must always premise your work with the identification and clarification of a problem. So we need that. We need that. And if you can confirm that there is indeed a problem or sets of evidence that confirm that impaired educators are excluded and not accommodated, then you have a story. You have a study to work on. Good evening, Prof. If you are intending to conduct a study on poor academic performance, how would you carry out this study? I think that's too wide a question, eh? I think you're asking me to answer 2 years' work with this thing. What I say to you, hey, is there's a lecture that I do on the research process. Please refer to that. I'm asking my colleagues over and over again to direct people to our work that we've done. There's a lecture on the research process. It tells you about how to formulate a question, how to plan for data collection, how to sample, how all those things happen. And that's what the person who was asked for me to give them guidance would most probably benefit from. 2, looking at research topics in your experience, what do you recommend for developing a research topic that is not only viable but also engaging and understandable? How would you recommend and what would you avoid? How do we develop a strong topic but a good foundation for the research phase? Folks, this is for Crystal. Once again, I have a session. We have a session that I have done on developing your research topic. That session is you must go to session, and the guidance will answer that to you. But essentially what you're meant to do is to prove that the thing you want to focus on in your study represents a problem that is not yet understood, and a problem that is a magnitude that makes it worthwhile, a problem that has been shown to affect the lives of people in a worthwhile and serious way. So as long as you can prove those dimensions, then you are on the money with whatever topic you choose. But I strongly suggest that you go back to the session. What are the criteria with which educational impact can be determined? Folks, that's a question that I can't answer in this context. You have to go now and look at models of impact analysis. They will tell you that when we are looking at impact, these are the 10 things that one considers and so forth and so forth. But at this stage, it can't be answered in that format, the question. Good evening, Prof and colleagues. My interest lies in developing a topic for Masters in Communication Sciences. I'm more into integrated organizational communication. Any advice on how to create a for sure successful topic? Tali, I think I've repeated my guidance 2 or 3 times now. And what I say to you, ultimately, please go to my session that I've done on developing a topic. But all it really boils down to is that you cannot do research unless you can show that the thing you're focusing on represents a validated problem, one that is worthy of being understood. Because if we don't understand it, there will be serious controversy in one way or form. So that's the general formula. But as I say, you can always appeal to my sessions. Prof, I'm currently busy with my chapter 2 corrections. Since my supervisor now only surfacing complained about external one's conduct. My question is on ethical clearance, which mine was recently approved. However, I realized that 1, I need to change the statistician, 2, change my data collection, 2, 3, change one of my scales. The aim is to improve my response rate. Do I have to resubmit these changes? So the idea with ethical clearance, folks, is if you've received clearance on the terms of the fact that you will do a study in a particular way, and you change things that will in some way touch the participants that you are targeting, i.e. change how they are experiencing you. Once you have anything of that nature, then you must report it. So from what I'm seeing, from what you've said, you would be reporting it to say, look, due to these circumstances, you've had to contemplate these changes, and you are asking that they record the changes and advise you, confirm that it is in order for you to continue. So the answer is please notify. If it was anything that didn't affect your interface with participants, then you wouldn't need to. My PhD thesis is on unpacking migration as an adaptation strategy for people impacted by climate change. I'm focusing on what informs people to migrate versus those who don't have the option and they become stranded because they don't have an option to migrate. Okay. So folks, that topic that is shared with me, it sounds fine, but to me, because the problem that generated the topic is not being explained, I'm not entirely convinced. So I say again, make your first foot be the topic problem. Good evening, Prof. I'm currently doing my honors in environmental management. I'm doing research on the exploration of selected urban parks in Johannesburg for their suitability for senior citizens. This is a quantitative approach, and I selected 3 approaches to study. My biggest challenge is using SPSS to analyze the data due to a small sample size. Now, here's the story. The basic bottom line is that if the phenomena that you are looking at cannot generate the numbers that you want, then it clearly is not something you should subject to quantitative inquiry. So to me, this the topic that you're suggesting is telling you in its all different guises that we are not. It's telling you in its different guises that this is not something to be subjected to quantitative inquiry, and you continue to engage. So it's clear that it's something that should not be subjected to quantitative inquiry. And if you really want to understand it, you need to do a foundational qualitative study. So to me, Anonymous, my worry is that it appears that you have decided what methodology and design you will use before understanding the requirements of your question. And the order in which these things occurs is actually backward, the difference of that. Now, if SPSS says that there's not enough items for you to analyze and get statistically significant things, then it's essentially telling you that this is not workable. Good evening. May I ask, what is the difference between literature review and conceptual framework? Look, folks, a literature review is when you look at all the literature that exists in a topic. Usually, it's research-based literature that you look at to review what has been written about a topic, what people have said, what they agree with, what they disagree with. That's what a literature review is. A conceptual framework is if, say, you were studying something, say I was studying happiness, and I read 4 or 5 theories about happiness, and each of them said happiness involves these 5 items. Another one said happiness involves 4 items. Another one said happiness involves 3 items. A conceptual framework is when I take those 3 items, those 3 different things that we're interested in, and I pull them together from the different theories and just sit and wait. And that is, yeah, that is what a conceptual framework would be like. So one literature review is a static, just consider the literature written about a topic. Conceptual framework is when you take different theories that have spoken and look at the concepts that they offer, pick the ones that mean something to you, join them together, then you now have a framing of the concepts that you are interested in, hence the term conceptual framework. Prof, my topic is NES's knowledge on phlebotomy in tertiary hospitals in Lesotho. I'm struggling with the sampling method. So firstly, I don't know why you would study that because you've not given a problem. But I'm assuming that you know that there's a problem that has been shown to exist around lack of knowledge and so forth. But if you look at knowledge, to explore and understand knowledge appears and sounds to me like a qualitative thing. So once it is a qualitative thing, then your sampling is driven not by anything else except purposive sampling and the different variations of it. So I suggest that once again, you go to our session on the different, you go to the different ways in which the different types of purposive sampling, and you look at the one that fits. But you can't do this in the absence of having watched and listened to the whole lecture that I did on this. There's something that says, how can I ask my topic? I'm not sure now what that relates to. Sam, I've answered many questions, and when you pose it as a standalone question like that, I'm not sure what you're referring to. So, but yeah, so maybe you need to rewrite the question. But generally, I don't guide people on how you ask a question. The issue is not how to ask a question. The issue is around what are the questions that remain unanswered in your topic, and that you will know after reading 10, 15 articles in your topic. Please share the link of how to develop a topic, as you have mentioned. Yes, colleagues, my team will do that, I'm sure. Yeah, so they are probably doing that in some shape or form, but you will get it. I'm currently doing research on e-schools, and community engagement, but in my research field being schools, I have an issue with them not being schools that engage with ICTs. How do I work around focusing? So Danielle, I actually have a problem with the fact that I'm not clear what problem has prompted you to study this. So if there's no clarity about your problem, then it becomes unclear what it is that you want to ultimately know, because it seems that you just want a set of questions, but we're not clear what you want to know. So on that basis, I am asking that you go back and you refine the problem that you are facing, look at the questions that need to be answered in relation to that, and you may actually be quite okay with engaging with schools that do not use ICT, so you can understand their barriers a bit better. So you don't always know about use from people who use things, you know about use also from people who can't use things. I'm currently analyzing, good evening, Prof. I'm currently analyzing results from my research proposal in order to compile a research report. Results have been provided in the form of a table to see the intercorrelations between the three construct studies, which are locus of control. How would you suggest I approach analyzing results on this table? Look, the only analysis that you can do is it's not about analyzing the table, it's analyzing how the table answers key questions that you're interested in. So if your research proposal had specific questions that you're interested in, make those the subheadings, then look at how the different parts of the table assist you to see and clarify things that are related to that. How do I conduct an in-depth interview? Okay, so folks, I can tell you left, right, and center how you do this, but best way, go to YouTube, look on how to conduct an in-depth research interview. Just clarify, look for things that have been done by professors and other people, and it will walk you through the story. But it's really not something I can tell you at this point in this way, because it's detailed. You need 30, 40-minute videos and so forth. Okay, Prof, most subjects have real problems to solve, thus referring to the problem. However, in philosophy, that does not need to be a problem, just a curiosity, an abstract claim. No, actually, that is wrong. I want to be categorical about this, folks. Research has a very specific definition, and the phenomena of interest or
or it has to be that you are focusing on clarifying a phenomenon of interest or clarifying a problem. So the very fact that it is philosophy, the subject matter of your philosophy will be referring to a phenomena that you need to understand. And you are understanding that phenomena because it has a significance of sorts. So you must show that, because if we don't, if we allow people, or in any context within research, for people to pursue an abstract claim or a curiosity, then we are actually saying that, look, any topic on earth can work as long as people are curious, or the individual writing it is curious. And that is not the premise by which we can operate. So you have to substantiate it, philosophy or not. That is the basic position that exists with how research is worked. And remember, folks, once you miss what the premise of research is, and you don't have what we call mission clarity, then expect that your journey through your research will also be fraught with lack of clarity, because you actually are unclear about what you're answering. Are you just answering a curiosity that will make an appearance as and when you wish? Or do you have specific discernible issues that you're interested in? And that is what ultimately differentiates what you can and can't extract if you enter into a topic without actually having a focus. So, folks, that's the evening. We have part 2. It's been a marathon of sorts. I've just answered all sorts of things from all over the place. But one thing is clear to me. And that thing is that, folks, you cannot, there are no shortcuts to how you get to understand the principles and topics that you should know. So you definitely need to make sure that you make sure that you understand and totally immerse yourselves in the theory that we teach you. Because if you don't do that, there's really no shortcut to learning this. So I am aware that I've put on my camera. One of my facilitators is meant to put my face back on, and they have not for a couple of minutes. So I'm hoping that this will prompt them to do that. Right, so students, tomorrow, same time, same place, but here's my broad-based answer to this. Many of the questions that people have asked are things that require you to go through our topics, and I'm asking the group, I'm asking our team to email all of you to send the link of all the sessions we've done, because we have an exceptionally well thought through presentation on conceptual frameworks, an exceptionally clear one on topic development, and all those things that you posed. And me answering them like in a vacuum assumes many pre-existing types of understanding that you have, and in all likelihood you don't have them. So you need that to help you start. Now, I think this is where I will stop. It's 7:30. Tomorrow we are at the same place, same time. What I say to people is we open our channel for this meeting a little early. So those of you who want to get ahead of the game, you join in and you start typing your question, and we'll look at those things. Today we've had exceptional attendance. I think we are looking close to 400 and something, which is quite rare, given how in recent times people have been less focused on showing up to these. But a live session always beats a video, because you get a chance to query and understand and clarify things. So on that note, I want to thank you for joining us this evening, and we'll see you tomorrow, 6 p.m. at same place, same time with the same facilitator. Thank you.